What if everything you've ever feared about hell was based on a misunderstanding? Or worse, a deliberate misdirection? Picture this: a child trembling in the pews of a dimly lit church, staring at the stained glass flames beneath the feet of sinners, whispering prayers not out of love, but fear. Fear of eternal torment, of fire, of gnashing teeth, of being lost forever in a place no one has seen, but everyone believes in. But what if I told you that hell, as you've been taught, is not what it seems? What if this terrifying concept of a fiery underworld isn't a place beneath our feet, but a symbol, a spiritual cipher passed down through ancient cultures, twisted over time, and weaponized for control? What if hell is not a destination, but a state of mind, a mirror reflecting the soul's descent into unconsciousness? In this video, we're going to pull back the veil. We'll dive into the ancient origins of the concept of hell, not from modern religion, but from the mystery schools, the Gnostic texts, the Hermetic writings, and hidden teachings long buried beneath layers of dogma. We'll uncover the symbolic language used by sages and mystics to encode profound truths within myths and metaphors. We'll decode the esoteric meaning of fire, the abyss, and the so-called punishment of the soul, not as physical tortures, but as internal alchemical processes designed to purify and awaken us. And most importantly, we'll reveal why this misinterpretation matters, why reclaiming the true meaning of hell could free you from fear, empower your spiritual journey, and offer practical tools to navigate your own inner darkness. So take a breath, open your mind, and prepare to question what you've always assumed was untouchable truth. Because the path to awakening begins with the courage to ask, what if hell was never meant to scare you, but to wake you up? To truly understand what hell is and what it is not, we must journey backwards. Not to the medieval cathedrals or fire and brimstone sermons of the 16th century, but far earlier, into the twilight mists of antiquity, where wisdom was passed through whispers, symbols, and riddles carved in stone. The pre-Christian roots of the underworld long before the word hell entered the human lexicon. Cultures across the world told stories of the underworld, a shadowy realm beneath the surface of life. But in nearly all of these traditions, the underworld was not a place of punishment. It was a place of transformation. In ancient Egypt, the soul passed through the Duat, a mysterious night sea filled with serpents, gods, and tests of the heart. This realm was not eternal damnation, but a necessary rite of passage. The heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, not to sentence it, but to reveal its alignment with truth. In Greek mythology, Hades was not synonymous with torment. It was the land of the dead, yes, a realm of shadows, but also of wisdom, mystery, and memory. Think of Orpheus descending to rescue Eurydice, or Odysseus speaking with the spirits of the departed in search of guidance. There is no eternal torture in these stories. There is struggle, yes, tests of character, encounters with the shadow, but all in service of the soul's evolution. Enter Christianity, a shift in symbolism when early Christian thinkers began translating scripture from Hebrew and Greek into Latin. A peculiar transformation occurred. The Hebrew word Sheol, a vague realm of the dead, was equated with the Greek Hades, which was then rendered in Latin as infernum, a word that would come to birth our modern notion of hell. But here's the twist. The word hell in the original Bible did not mean a fiery underworld. It referred to Gehenna, a real place outside Jerusalem, a valley where, centuries prior, human sacrifices were performed and where later trash was burned. Jesus, when he warned about the fires of Gehenna, was using a powerful metaphor that his audience understood. He was not describing a literal, eternal furnace, but the consequences of a life consumed by spiritual decay, the burning of ego, of untruth, of unawareness. Yet over time, this metaphor was reinterpreted, flattened, into a physical location, a divine prison for disobedience. What had once been symbolic became literal, and what had been a journey of the soul became a system of reward and punishment. Esoteric traditions kept the flame alive while the outer church moved toward control through fear, the inner teachings, the mystery schools, preserve the deeper truth. In Gnostic texts, hell is never a place. It is ignorance itself. The soul descends into material life and forgets its divine origin. This forgetting, the sleep of the spirit, is the true fall, the real exile. Salvation comes not from external obedience, but from gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine within. In Hermeticism, the infernal realms are stages of density and inertia, where the soul becomes entangled in illusion. The further it descends into matter and identification with form, the more it suffers. But this is not punishment, it is entropy. And through conscious effort, alchemy of the soul, one can rise again. In Buddhism, too, we see hell realms described not as eternal sentences, but as states of consciousness. When one lives with hatred, craving, or delusion, one is in hell, right here, right now. But these realms are not forever. They are impermanent, and through awareness, one can ascend. In every sacred tradition, beneath the surface of myth and scripture, lies a recurring truth. Hell is a metaphor for spiritual blindness. It is the night through which the soul must pass to remember the light. In the next section, we'll explore exactly how this symbolic hell operates, what it means, why it matters, and how understanding it can shift the very way you relate to pain, fear, and spiritual growth. The inner fire, alchemy of the soul. Imagine, for a moment, a flame. Not one that scorches the skin, but one that burns in silence within the psyche. This fire is not literal, yet it is more real than any furnace. It is the fire of guilt, shame, unresolved trauma, the smoldering heat of desires unfulfilled, of truths denied. It is the fire we carry within us, often unknowingly. This, my friend, is the true hell, not a destination after death, but a condition of the soul while still alive. It is what the mystics call the dark night. It is what Dante meant when he wrote, "In the middle of life's journey, I found myself in a dark wood." We enter hell not because we are sentenced, but because we are asleep. We descend not because we are cursed, but because we are called to awaken. The fall into matter across esoteric traditions, hell is symbolic of the fall, the descent of the soul from pure awareness into form, identity, limitation. This descent is necessary. It is the journey of spirit into flesh. The divine enters the world to know itself through contrast, light through darkness, joy through sorrow, wholeness through fragmentation. But in the forgetting of our origin, we suffer. We identify with the body, the ego, the story. We cling to appearances and fear their loss. We pursue fleeting pleasures and run from the void. And in doing so, we create our own torment. This is echoed in the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." In other words, the hell we fear is the shadow we ignore. The fire that burns us is the one we refuse to tend. Symbolism in Scripture, Gehenna, fire, and darkness. Let's return to the concept of Gehenna, the valley outside Jerusalem. To the uninitiated, it's merely a historical landfill. But to the mystic, it's an alchemical image, a sacred metaphor. In ancient texts, fire is not just destruction, it is purification. Just as gold is refined by fire, so too is the soul refined by trial, loss, and suffering. When Jesus speaks of the fires of Gehenna, he is not threatening punishment. He is warning of the pain caused by a life out of alignment with truth. Likewise, when scriptures speak of outer darkness, this is not a cosmic dungeon. It is the state of spiritual forgetfulness, the absence of light, not imposed from outside, but arising from within. The Zohar, a foundational Kabbalistic text, describes hell as a corrective dimension, where the soul confronts the consequences of its ego and is given the opportunity to return to alignment. Not eternal damnation, but a healing crucible. Myth as map. The journey through the underworld. Consider the archetypal journey of descent in myths around the world. Inanna, Queen of Heaven, descends into the underworld to face her shadow and is stripped of her titles, only to rise again transformed. Jesus, too, descends into the underworld between crucifixion and resurrection, not to suffer, but to liberate. Buddha, before awakening, sits beneath the Bodhi tree and is assaulted by Mara, the Lord of Illusion, his final trial before enlightenment. These are not tales of damnation. They are maps, encoded spiritual blueprints for the soul's evolution. We descend into hell whenever we face loss, heartbreak, addiction, despair. But this is not the end. It is the initiation. The true teachings show us that hell is not where we are punished. It is where we are reforged. In the next section, we'll go even deeper. We'll examine why modern religions weaponize the concept of hell, how fear blocks spiritual growth, and what forgotten texts reveal about the true nature of the afterlife and soul. The hijacking of hell. Control through fear. To understand how the true meaning of hell was distorted, we must look at a deeper pattern, one that reappears throughout history. The sages, mystics, and initiates of old spoken symbols. They knew that divine truth was too vast to be spoken plainly. They wrapped wisdom in metaphor, allegory, and riddle, not to obscure, but to protect it from misunderstanding and misuse. But over time, what was once metaphor became doctrine. By the 4th century, as Christianity transitioned from an underground movement of mystics to an imperial institution, the symbolic was made literal. The teachings of inner transformation were simplified into external obedience. And hell, once a metaphor for spiritual darkness, became a weapon of fear. Why? Because fear is a powerful tool of control. If the masses can be made to believe that deviation from dogma leads to eternal torment, they can be easily governed. Independent thought becomes dangerous. Inner gnosis, direct connection to the divine, is deemed heresy. The gate to God is guarded by those who claim exclusive access. And so, the metaphorical fire of inner purification was replaced with images of demons, torture, and a pit without end. Dante's Inferno, though a literary masterpiece, fueled this shift. Drawing from Catholic theology and medieval imagination, it painted a vivid portrait of sinners suspended in elaborate punishments. But even Dante knew this was a symbolic map. The tragedy is that later generations took it as literal prophecy. The fear blockade. Spiritual paralysis, let us be clear. Fear of hell has paralyzed spiritual growth for millions. Instead of guiding people inward to confront their shadow and awaken, it has taught them to suppress, deny, and obey blindly. The path becomes external, checking boxes, performing rituals, avoiding taboos, not because they liberate the soul, but because they might keep us out of fire. But here's the paradox. In running from hell, we create it. The person who avoids their pain does not escape it. They carry it, unprocessed. The guilt repressed becomes illness. The shadow ignored becomes addiction. The trauma denied becomes projection. And the soul remains trapped in the very darkness it fears. Hell, in this sense, becomes a loop, a cycle of unconsciousness perpetuated by the fear of looking within. Gnostic and Hermetic wisdom. The soul's real journey in Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John, we are told of archons, cosmic forces that bind the soul in illusion. These entities do not torture us with fire. They deceive us into forgetting who we are. The fall is not a moral failure. It is amnesia of the soul. In Hermetic teachings, the soul moves through spheres, layers of mind, emotion, and karma, until it is refined enough to return to the divine source. The purification is not punishment. It is the shedding of all that is not real. Even in Eastern traditions, this pattern holds. The Bardo Thodol, Tibetan Book of the Dead, describes post-death visions not as judgments from outside, but as projections of the mind. Those who recognize them as illusion are freed. Those who cling or recoil descend into confusion. In other words, hell is not what you face after death. It's what you carry with you while alive. The symbolic anatomy of hell let us now decode some of hell's symbolic architecture. The flames, not physical, but emotional, representing burning regret, desire, or shame, forces that consume when unacknowledged. Demons, aspects of a self, the inner critic, the addict, the saboteur. They do not torment us externally. They are us, into sown form. The abyss, the void. Not punishment, but the terror of facing the emptiness within. Yet in this void lies the seed of awakening. Chains and prisons, symbolic of identification, thinking we are the body, the story, the wound. These chains are mental, not divine. These symbols are invitations, not threats. They ask us to go inward, to walk into the fire, not to be punished, but to be purified, to descend into our own Gehenna, not to be lost, but to be found. In the next section, we will explore how to practically apply this understanding. How do we navigate our own hell? What tools can we use to transmute our pain into wisdom and our shadows into light? Now that we've unmasked hell as a symbolic realm, a state of internal suffering rather than a literal punishment, it begs the question, what do we do with this knowledge? Understanding hell not as a sentence, but as a sacred passage, reclaims its transformative power. It shifts our relationship to suffering, shadow, and fear itself. This isn't just philosophy, it's a map for radical spiritual liberation. Let us now explore how to walk through the fires of our own Gehenna and come out purified, not destroyed. Shadow work. Confronting the inner demon, the first and most essential practice is what Carl Jung called shadow work, the process of bringing the unconscious into the light. Remember, in esoteric teachings, the demons of hell are not entities out there. They're the fragmented aspects of the psyche we repress, the parts we label as bad, wrong, or unacceptable. These fragments fester in the unconscious, manifesting as anxiety, depression, addiction, or projection onto others. How to begin? Journaling. Regularly ask yourself, what am I avoiding? Or what emotions or thoughts do I suppress? Mirror work. Look into your own eyes in the mirror. Speak aloud the truths you're afraid to say. Allow buried emotions to surface. Observe emotional triggers. Your reactions to others often reveal your own shadows. Judgment is a flashlight. Follow it inward. The goal isn't to destroy the demon, but to integrate it, to sit with it, speak with it, and understand what it protects. Alchemical reframing. Transmuting pain into power in hermetic alchemy. The process of transmutation begins with calcination, burning away the false. This is your personal hell, the moment your illusions collapse. But instead of resisting the fire, the alchemist welcomes it. How to apply? When pain arises, do not run. Sit in silence. Observe the pain as energy, not as identity. Ask, what part of me is being purified right now? This shifts you from victim to witness, from cursed to consecrated. Keep a fire diary. Write down what is being burned away in you. Ego attachments, fears, control. Every time you feel life intensify. This is not easy work, but this is soul forging. You are not being punished. You are being tempered like steel. Breath and presence. Dissolving the abyss. When mystics speak of outer darkness, they're describing the abyss of disconnection. In our modern lives, this often shows up as numbness, disassociation, or a sense of inner void. But the gateway back is always presence. Practices deep conscious breathing. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale through the mouth for 6. Repeat until presence returns. Body scanning meditation. Close your eyes. Bring awareness to your feet, then slowly up the body, releasing tension. This grounds the soul in the temple of the body. Candle gazing. Tritaka. Focus your eyes on a small flame for several minutes. Let the fire mirror your inner purification. It centers the mind and connects you to the symbolic fire of spirit. The more present you become, the more the illusions of hell dissolve. Symbolic ritual. Rewriting the narrative to complete your descent and return. Consider performing a personal ritual of transmutation. Example. The Gehenna fire ritual. Write down on paper all the beliefs, memories, and fears that have kept you in inner torment. Light a candle in silence. Speak aloud each item. Honor it. Then burn the paper slowly. As the smoke rises, speak. These ashes return to source. I am no longer bound by illusions. I rise from the fire reborn. Simple, but profound. This ritual affirms that your hell, is not forever. You have the power to end it by consciousness, not by fear. Community and reflection. No one descends alone finally. Do not walk this path in isolation. Join circles of conscious seekers, whether online or in person. Share your journey. Ask others about theirs. Reflect regularly. Ask, where am I in my own descent or ascent? When souls witness each other, the burden of the underworld becomes lighter. The core truth is this: hell is not the end. It is the beginning of initiation. The fire is not your enemy. It is your refiner. And what burns away was never truly you. In the final section, we will bring these threads together, summarizing the journey and offering a final spark to awaken your deepest knowing. So now you see, hell was never a final destination. It was never a cosmic dungeon of flames for the wicked, nor a punishment handed down from a wrathful deity. It is, and has always been, a symbol, a profound mirror reflecting the soul's confrontation with its own forgetting. We have traveled far in this exploration. We peeled back the layers of history, revealing how ancient cultures viewed the underworld not as punishment, but as transformation. We unmasked how religious institutions repurposed this sacred metaphor into a tool for fear and obedience. We decoded the flames, the demons, and the darkness, not as external forces, but as inner aspects of the self awaiting recognition. And most importantly, we learned how to walk through our own fires with courage, awareness, and alchemical grace. Because here is the secret. The only way out of hell is through it. Not by running, not by pleading, but by awakening. When you stop fearing your pain and begin to listen to it. When you stop suppressing your shadow and start integrating it. When you stop seeing suffering as a curse and start recognizing it as the initiation it was always meant to be, you do not just escape hell. You transcend it. You become the flame, the light in the abyss, the soul that walks through the underworld and returns bearing gifts. This is your inheritance, not a heaven handed down to you by someone else's approval, but a liberation you claim by descending into yourself, facing the dragon, and remembering you were never separate from the divine. So ask yourself now, what part of me still clings to fear? What fire have I been avoiding? What shadow calls out for my embrace? Let this video be not the end of your inquiry, but the beginning of your deeper descent and rise. If this message resonated, share it with a fellow seeker. Leave a comment below with your insights, questions, or stories of facing your own fire. And remember, you are not alone on this path. The light you're searching for in the darkness is already within you.